Not every house is a home. Some of them choose you. In 1983, John Jones was searching for a fresh start. After years of hard work, he decided to buy a house for his family, a quiet place far from the noise of the city. He found it in a suburb of New England, a large old house, surrounded by trees on all sides, as if it were isolated from the world. The price was unusually low. When he asked the agent why, he smiled and said, "It's just an old house, nothing to worry about." But that smile didn't feel right. Despite that, John signed the contract. And at that moment, everything began. On their first night in the house, the atmosphere felt strangely quiet. A heavy silence, as if the house itself was holding its breath. At exactly 2:13 a.m., a sharp scream echoed through the house. It was Emily. John rushed into her room and found her sitting on the bed, trembling, her eyes fixed on the corner of the room. She said, her voice shaking, "There's a man standing there. He's not moving. He's just watching me." John looked at the corner. There was nothing there. He tried to calm her down, but just before leaving, he heard slow footsteps coming from upstairs. One step, then another, as if someone was walking, even though everyone was downstairs. At first, the family tried to ignore what was happening, but the occurrences didn't stop. They grew stronger. Doors no longer stayed shut. They opened on their own. Chairs moved slightly every night, then returned to their place. The sounds became clearer, whispers unclear, but filled with a heavy, angry presence. But the mirrors were the worst. One night, Mary noticed that her reflection was delayed for a second. Another time, she saw someone standing behind her in the mirror. When she turned around, no one was there. After a week, Emily started acting differently. She would sit alone in her room for hours, talking to someone no one could see. Sometimes she laughed, sometimes she suddenly went silent, as if listening. One night, her mother asked, "Who are you talking to?" Emily slowly smiled and said, "He says he lives here. He's been here for a long time, before us." She also started drawing, but her drawings were not normal. Faces without eyes, tall, shadowy figures, and always a man standing in the corner.
John could no longer ignore it. He decided to investigate the history of the house. He went to the local archives and began searching through old records. What he found was disturbing. The land the house was built on had been used over 100 years ago for unknown purposes, but some accounts suggested dark rituals. Then he found something worse, a file about a family who lived in the same house decades earlier. They disappeared suddenly. No note, no belongings taken, as if they had never existed. At that point, John knew this wasn't normal. The family contacted paranormal investigators. When they arrived, they immediately felt something was wrong. One of them said, "This place isn't right." They set up cameras, audio recorders, and temperature sensors. On the very first night, they captured something. A faint voice, whispering, "Leave." Then another voice, deeper, darker, "She is mine." Over the next few days, the cameras recorded things that made no sense. A shadow moving across the wall, with no source. A door slamming shut violently, with no wind. Sudden drops in temperature in certain rooms. But the most active place was the attic. When they went up, they found strange symbols covering the walls, drawn chaotically beneath, yet forming a disturbing pattern, as if someone had been trying to summon something. One night, everything lost control. Windows slammed shut violently. Furniture moved across the room. Screams echoed throughout the house. Then suddenly, fire ignited in one of the corners. Emily collapsed to the ground, and when she screamed, it wasn't her voice. It was something deeper. Something filled with rage. The investigators knew it had to end. They performed a full cleansing ritual. Candles were lit in every room. Prayers were spoken. Protective symbols were drawn on the floors and walls. The ritual lasted for hours. The air felt heavy. The sounds disappeared. And then, suddenly, silence. A few days later, the family left the house. They never returned. But the story didn't end. Even today, neighbors claim they sometimes see a shadow in one of the windows. And at night, some say they can hear the faint whisper of a child. He started screaming, but suddenly, his voice cut off. When the team managed to open the door, he was gone, completely gone. But the recording device was still running. And when they listened to it later, they heard the same voice again, but this time, clearer. Another one. Since that day, no one has entered that house again, but people who live nearby say that on some nights, they can see lights turning on inside the house, even though it's abandoned. And sometimes, they can hear the sound of a chair slowly moving inside. But before the story ends, there is one thing you need to know. After all the families left, leaving the house abandoned, something strange began to happen. One night, a guard heard a sound for the first time in years. The sound of a little girl laughing, echoing through the windows, even though the house was empty. When they checked the cameras, they noticed something very strange. A small shadow moving quickly down the hallways. A little hand appearing on a window, touching the glass from the inside, then disappearing completely before the camera could catch it. The house never lets anyone leave safely, and anyone who thinks it's just a place will soon realize they are gravely mistaken. Do you dare to go near it? Or will you let it wait for its next victim? The question now, how many people entered that house and never came out?